Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto become the Dragon Sin of Wrath and got Harem? The short movie. Huge shout out to AdventReader221 for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Konoha. Naruto was pleased by this genius of sealing before him. He had spent the last 3 years creating a seal that could force time itself to pause. Not long, as it only halted time for about 30 seconds if not 45 depending on how much chakra was thrown into the array, as it consumed immense amounts of energy to work. He was considered a genius when it came to sealing techniques, but this was his most prized technique that could do many wonders for the ninja world if it worked like it was meant to do. Now, all he needed to do was push a minimum pulse of chakra into the seal and see if it worked. Doing so, Naruto watched as the seal glowed blue like it should and looked around happily and noticed things were moving so slow that it seemed time had paused. How strange, it wasn't supposed to do that. Before he could cancel the seal to rework some of the kinks, the seal began glowing red, something it wasn't supposed to do, and Naruto could only gasp when a small vortex opened beneath his feet and the young blonde seemingly vanished into thin air, and in the next 8 hours, word of Naruto Namikaze's vanishing spread across the village, hidden in the leaf like a wildfire. Word would soon spread that his father had used seals to transport him away, but with no evidence, he was released. Unknown location 3,643 years ago. He was stuck in the inky blackness of unknown. He could feel the world around him passing by, changing as he was sent to the unknown. He felt a presence, dark and evil. But when he opened his eyes, he could clearly see that the young man in front of him was giving him a saddened expression. "Where am I?" His voice echoed through the void. "Am I dead?" he asked. The blonde shook his head. "No, I am the one who is dead. You'll find that we are much alike, and this world will need the both of us to end the upcoming darkness. But we cannot do it alone." The short blonde told him, "My name is Meliodas. What's your name?" he asked the whiskered teen. "I'm Naruto. Why am I here?" he asked. "To make sure that things go according to plan where I failed," Meliodas said, his voice no longer echoing through the expanse around them. "My body needs a soul, a pure soul, to make sure that my father, the Demon King, doesn't succeed in destroying the world like he tried to before in the past. That's where you come in. As you no doubt realize, you more than likely already died, but your spirit was too strong to kill, and the seal you devised sensed this and sent it to my body, which is incapable of decaying, and is about to inhabit the flesh left behind. Please don't let him win again," Meliodas said before his spirit broke down into small magenta-colored particles and filtered into Naruto's own spirit, and then, the blonde gasped as he awoke. Naruto looked around. It was dark, smoke and fire filled the air, and it was hard to breathe, but he quickly noticed that it was becoming easier to do so as he continued to inhale deep breaths. He had so many questions, but knew he wasn't going to be given any. But through the small selection of memories passed on to him from Meliodas' soul answered the question of where he was. Purgatory. Purgatory is an infinite, chaotic, hellish spacetime where mutilated souls and predatory monsters seek prey. The air is scorching hot and freezing cold at the same time, and the earth is toxic, together destroying the flesh and bone of the living. Thanks to Meliodas' limited knowledge being given to him, he knew that time is warped in Purgatory. A minute in the real world corresponds to a year in Purgatory. It is basically a universe separated from the mortal plane. Before he could do anything, a voice spoke up from next to him. "So, you're finally awake. How are you feeling?" A female voice spoke clearly, causing him to turn. Immediately he knew who she was, Dragon, a friend and fellow demon of the Demon Clan. She was a future member of the coveted 10 Commandments like Meliodas was/is. Dragon is a toned woman with long spiky orange hair. She wears no clothes, instead covering the breasts, right leg in her own darkness. She has demon markings on her left cheek which resemble a beast's open mouth with a circle in the center. Dragon has a laid-back and nonchalant demeanor. She is usually calm and does not seem to be shocked by many events. She expresses laziness and boredom the majority of the time. Though, Dragon has a very quick temper when certain buttons are pushed. Naruto/Meliodas groaned. "To think I've had better days." He responded, "What happened for me to end up like I was?" He asked her. "Well, for starters you challenged a former 10 Commandments turned Indra to a fight on your own for a so-called training exercise and barely succeeded in beating it using your power. Then you had the pacifier demon, Chandler, whom is you master if you recall, trained you for hours on end without rest until you managed to master the ability of full counter, both the physical and magical, and ended up creating several types of countenance spells based off the full counter. She explained to the blonde demon prince. So yeah, bottom line is, you overexerted yourself and nearly died trying to get stronger. She told him. What she didn't know was that for several hours Meliodas was in fact dead, and during that span of time, Naruto's soul was placed into his dying body to take over before he eventually woke up next to her. To Meliodas, Jiraiya was a close ally and confidant. Hell, at point in time, if Meliodas' real Meliodas died, they would be enemies, then once more allies, where she would eventually die. However, due to the original Meliodas' soul moving on to an afterlife and having his physical body house Naruto's soul before his curse was placed upon him, things had drastically changed from what was meant to happen in the future in regards to whom lived or died. Well, thanks for watching over me while I was unconscious. He told the demoness. Has anything happened since I went under? He asked her. Aside from your brother being the annoying little brat he is, no. The tensions between the goddess clan and our own clan have had a bit of a rise, but nothing serious has come of it. Oh, and Chandler wanted to see you. Said to meet him at your usual training area? She informed the blonde demon. Thanks. I'll see you around. Make sure the others know as well. He said before he called upon a set of dark magenta-colored wings made of dark mana. He didn't know how he could summon them or fly as if he had done it his whole life, but Naruto chalked it up to Meliodas' memories being implanted to his own. Flying through the destructive lands of Purgatory, Naruto. Meliodas. Whatever, he'd stick with Meliodas as that was whom his body was named and people referred to him as. The demon prince soon arrived at the intended destination. A frozen wasteland that burned so hot it was like he was standing in a burning tundra. Chandler, I'm here. What did you want to discuss? He demanded. Ah, there you are, young Master Meliodas. Oh, how it warms my heart you have come to see me so quickly. Come, I have a gift for you. The demon cheered happily as he waved his student over to where he sat. Chandler is shown to be a short old man wearing a set of clothes and rings suited for nobles with elaborate designs. He has green spiky hair, beard, and mustache. His demon mark is on the right side of his head, with two spiked circles connected by a line cutting through his right eye. When he opens his mouth, he shows himself to have a full set of fangs for teeth. Well, you called me. I can't ignore he person who has been teaching me to fight now, can I? Meliodas said, grinning. Well, for you, my prince, some tardiness is exceptional, especially when you are with that young lass Jiraiya. You know your father thinks the two of you would make an exceptional pair if you wed one another. She is of noble blood much like yourself and is also in line to inherit one of the powerful 10 commandments of your father's team of guards like you are in the future. Chandler said before waving off any comments, but we aren't here to discuss such things now, are we? No, I have a gift for you, my prince. He said, reaching behind him to pull out a box that could only survive in the demon realm if it was made of Purgatory's materials. For you. Chandler offered him the box. It's time I step down and let one of the younger generation have the power to destroy our enemies. He smiled softly, happily, as Meliodas gave the box a curious look before he ripped it open to reveal the box's contents within. Now, for those who had never seen Chandler back when he was at the height of his power, the weapon in Meliodas' lap was definitely one of the most legendary weapons in existence. The blade was named Graham, and it was the most deadly demon blade to have been forged in Purgatory. Graham is a large double-edged sword that has vibrant colors despite being a demon sword. The pommel is a gold cone-like shape with the addition of a triangle attached to the pommel. The triangle is missing the base and the middle of it because of the pommel, and the handle is colored with a mix of red and purple. The cross guard is a rectangular bar colored black, with gold symbols etched onto it, a bronze mark in the middle, and features a red semicircle protrusion on both sides of the cross guard. The blade is black with a red edge, but a red aura sometimes shrouds it, giving it a dark red color all around. The blade itself is fairly long and near the tip, it curves upwards then curves back in. The blade also sports 3 hollow holes in the form of a triangle, and is located in the middle of the blade curving upwards. At the bottom of the blade, there is a piece of metal, acting as a fuller. It has red lines on it that increase in height, but it stays on the golden part, and the fuller at the bottom is in the shape of a rectangle standing upwards. The difference is that the top left has a large amount taken off it, which makes the left side shorter compared to the right. Further along the blade is a golden design, which looks like a blade, with two black rectangles connected by a line, and the tip of it goes out by a small degree and goes back into the tip of the blade. The tip part of the blade design is two black modified squares and a black diamond-like circle. 1. Meliodas looked at Chandler in shock. 2. Don't know what to say, he said in awe. Chandler smiled at his pupil. You need not say anything, young master, just use it to protect the realm at any cost, and Graham will never betray you. After all, it's why I was allowing you to train with it these last couple centuries as you grew. He told the young demon heir. Lyonesse Kingdom 10 years ago. The city and magnificent capital of Lyonesse was in ruins. Unknown creatures soared through the air to try and search for survivors, but the only ones alive were those searching the bodies of the deceased from the day prior. Walking through the ruined streets was a young boy roughly of 15 with a large clunky suit of armor that was still too large for him to wear. The destruction he was seeing was unlike anything he had ever seen in his life. He had not once let go of his sword in fear of getting into a fight he knew he wouldn't win, but he was terrified for his life. He didn't know what he should be doing. Hey! An elderly voice called out to him, startling the lad. Over here. The man commanded, Give me a hand. He stated. The boy swallowed nervously and walked over to the man. Yes, sir, he responded, catching up to the elder. So, where you from? The bearded man asked the kind. See Kane's village, sir. The teen answered honestly. Kane's? I've served this kingdom for nearly 40 years and I've never heard of the place. The man spoke. That's not surprising, sir. It's out in the boonies, the boy said in response. The old man looked to the younger man. If you're this flustered, you'll never make it as an apprentice, holy knight. The old man said, noticing the nervousness of the young man. I don't think I could be a holy knight in a million years, the boy said in response. Then this might be a rough job for a young fella like you, the old man said as they left the alley. The boy gasped as he took notice of the large number of bodies lying before him. What? Who are these people? He asked in horror of the slaughter that apparently happened in front of him. Holy knights, one and all, the old man answered honestly. What happened here? The boy asked, stepping back in horror. What happened? They were all butchered, the old man answered, in the blink of an eye, at that, by just 7 people. The old man answered the now quivering teen. Britannia, unknown location. Currently an individual could be seen walking through a desolated valley. He wore a black suit of armor meant for a holy knight. It is made up of metals known only to his people, lighter than any steel, but stronger than dozens of any human alloy. The heavy suit of full-body armor is a deep ebony color with crimson borders. The shoulder pauldrons are black with a circling crest of gold that have a large triskele design. The breastplate is made up from a series layered plates with a color pattern of black metal with a crimson border lining each individual plate, and a large triskele welded to the center of the top plate. The armor's legs are black with crimson kneecaps in the form of a skull welded on. His waist guard is a thin inner piece of dark metal with a red outer layer. Under his armor he wears ring-styled chain link armor as added protection, while wearing a simple shirt and pants under the link armor. He has a dark red cloak he wears on his back that is attached to the shoulders with a triskele sewn to the middle. His hand held the weapon bestowed upon him by King Bartra that had allowed him to accomplish many amazing feats, but not as many as his old blade would have been able to. Stopping by a brook, he quickly shed the armor and his clothes so he could bathe. No doubt the kingdom would send bloodhounds or something just as bad after him. When he finished bathing, he sat on a log by a small fire and gazed at the flames as if in a daze. The individual was a very tall and muscular young man with blue eyes, his blonde hair slicked back, its numerous spiky strands pointing backwards, though some of it fell down in a small tuft on his forehead. He has a distinct lightning bolt-shaped scar on his right eye. An old wound from when he was younger, had received it when he was around 490 if he recalled right. The memories were a bit hazy, but he assumed it was roughly around that time. He was currently shirtless, allowing his upper body to be seen, along with long jagged scars and tattoos along his arms and chest. The scars on his side ran in the same direction as his left ribs from his spine to the center of his chest. He also has 2 scars located on the left side of his chest and looped to just above his heart before curving up to a stop. Finally, 4 straight scars curved around his left bicep before dropping straight down, while 2 on his shoulder curled over and connected to 2 of the scars on his bicep. Meanwhile, on the left side of his chest was a tribal tattoo that spread up to his shoulder, and went over to cover part of his upper back, where in the center of this tribal tattoo was a tattoo of a spiral in the shape of a leaf. Reaching out, he picks up the shirt he had discarded and slipped it over his head. Standing up, he gives a stretch before looking out over the forest as the sun begins to rise up into the sky, illuminating his form. He now wears a black, sleeveless shirt with white fur lining the bottom sleeve edges and collar, and magenta pants with a black belt. This was Meliodas, the son of the infamous Demon King, former leader of the mythical and all-powerful 10 Commandments. He sighs as he looks up to the sky, speaking silently to himself. What the hell happened? Where did we go wrong? How did it all come to this? He questioned himself. One moment he was considered one of the most prestigious warriors in the world, and now he was nothing more than a common criminal. All due to a crime he and his allies never even committed. He could never go back to the life of luxury he had gotten used to while living in Lyonesse. He could never return to his home in the demon realm, as not only was it sealed off for eternity, but he was considered the most heinous traitor to his people. He didn't know or remember the time his original home was formed, so it could be too late to check and see if anyone he knew from his time there was even alive or not. For all intents and purposes, he was all alone. Meanwhile, it had been nearly 8 months since Naruto had suddenly vanished from Konoha. Naruto's father, Minato, who was also the leader of the Hidden Leaf, had been secretly sending out ambush search teams to see if they could find his son, but unfortunately, not only did they not find hide nor hair of his son, they couldn't even find a whisper of the boy across the 4 winds of the elemental nations. However, he recently heard a rumor of a man in Britannia by the name of Meliodas who had actually met his son, even if only in passing, before parting ways. If these rumors were true, then he would need to find this Meliodas person before someone else did. He was broken from his thoughts at the sound of someone knocking on his office door, to which he gave the work for them to enter. The blonde Hokage watched as a group of his ninja entered his office. These ninja consisted of Tsunade Senju, Shizune Kato, who was Tsunade's apprentice in medicine, which made them 2 of the best medics he could send from the elemental nations. Kurina Yuhi, who was an illusionist and tracking expert. His daughters and 2 of the triplets, one of which was Naruto Tsukuyomi and Taiyuya. Tsukuyomi specialized in water-style ninjutsu to the point many heralded her abilities to be similar to the second Hokage, who was Tsunade's great-uncle Tobirama. Taiyuya was a master of illusions and poisons. Then there was his wife, Kushina, who was a skilled swordsman and user of several elements, including a Kekkai Genkai, which allowed her to summon chains powerful enough to hold down demons as powerful as the 9-tailed fox spirit, something she did right after birthing the children before it was sealed into Naruto. Then you had Kushina's student Anko, who was a member of the Torture and Interrogation Corps and was also a summoner of snakes while specializing in many other fields of combat, particularly fire style and earth style. Now, Tsunade normally wouldn't have stepped foot in Konoha, but unfortunately, she didn't have much choice in the matter. Minato had sent her a message saying how if she did not return to Konoha, then she, along with her apprentice Shizune, would be labeled as rogues, as well as how it was her duty to be there for Taiyuya and Tsukuyomi, since she was Girl Sand and extension Naruto's godmother. So, with no other choice, the buxom blonde returned home with her apprentice. Tsunade sighed as she looked at her Kage and asked, "Alright Minato, why are we here? I'm sure it has to do with the rumors of the other continent, right?" With the other women nodding their heads, as they also wanted to know what they were doing there. Minato nodded and spoke as he reached into his desk. As per our agreement with the land of Britannia, we give up information on rogue ninja in the elemental nations, and manage this by sending the kingdom's bingo books detailing the rogues in question. Minato then pulled out some flyers, then they do the same with their warriors turned criminal. It recently came across my desk that a group of 7 of their most deadly warriors have gone rogue after killing their Grand Master several years ago. It's actually quite humorous that they are called the 7 deadly sins, for which they named their order after. Taking the papers he had in hand, he then spread the flyers out over the desk to show they were in fact wanted posters, revealing 6 of the 7. There is also a rumor that one of them knows the location of Naruto, but keeps it to himself. Minato finished, as the women felt their eyes widen in shock. "Nizan is in Britannia?" Tsukuyomi and Taiyuya simultaneously asked their father, who nodded his head. Not only that, but according to the rumor, the one who knows his location is said to be the most powerful of the group. Assuming this rumor to be true, he might be on par with some of us Kage, possibly even Tsunade's granduncle. Minato said. What they didn't know, however, was that Meliodas had surpassed even Tsunade's own grandfather by nearly 6 times as much power alone when he fought in his base abilities. The women couldn't help themselves and gulped a bit in fear. Tobirama Senju was a high Kage level ninja and was the 3rd most powerful warrior in his time period after Madara Uchiha and Tsunade's grandfather, Hashirama Senju. If these rumors were true, then they would need to be extremely cautious. Shizune stepped forward and said, if that is true, then we will need to approach with caution if we ever find him. Minato nodded and said, indeed, that is why I am sending all of you to Britannia to track down Meliodas and see if you can indeed confirm that he is knowledgeable of Naruto's location. Minato then places down the wanted poster and says, this is the man you are looking for, his name is Meliodas. He tells them, now, I want you all to find him and try to see if he really knows the location of Naruto. I don't care what tactics or methods you have to use, just make sure you don't get yourselves killed, you come back in one piece, and you come back with Naruto. Is that understood? All the women then replied in unison, yes, Hokage-sama. And with that, the group of women began to leave in order to prepare for the journey ahead of them, as they didn't know what they should expect. Little did they know, the journey they were about to embark on would keep them away from Konoha and the elemental nations for quite a number of years. 3 years later, the wonderful country of Britannia, so full of life and wonder that is very different from the war-torn lands of the elemental nations. Along with having different creatures, they have different abilities and military. Instead, chakra like the elemental nations uses, the people of Britannia use mana, which allows them to use magic. Instead of having shinobi and kunoichi, the lands of Britannia use soldiers called knights, with an elite class called Holy Knights, which act as the guardians and keepers of the peace for the land they reside in. There are several things that make the Holy Knights that live in Britannia unique, much like a ninja or kunoichi. While ninja did indeed use a series of ranks to distinguish their roles and capabilities, theirs was a simplified version of a ranking system. For ninja, the ranking systems went thus: Academy Student, which is as it sounds a student in the process of learning to be a ninja; Genin, who was a freshly graduated academy student just being taught the basics of how to fight for their country; Chunin were ninja who were still inexperienced but knew enough that it allowed them to overpower a mere Genin. A Chunin knew at least several elemental techniques that would allow them to determine a fight was worth it or not. A special Jonin was a ninja who was more experienced than a Chunin, but wasn't quite ready for the role of full Jonin. A special Jonin is as powerful as an ordinary Jonin was, but lacked the knowledge to be a full-fledged Jonin. Then there were the actual Jonin. They were the masters of combat. They would teach the Genin how to fight once they graduated from the academy, and instruct them on many things from ninjutsu all the way to interrogation or even seduction depending on the specific team's specialty. Finally was the Kage. These were not only the strongest ninjas of any hidden village, but were also the leaders of the entire village. Much like a king, they would command the forces, gather councils to discuss politics among other things. And if need be, the Kage could command their country to prepare themselves for war on any principle if they so wished. Now, for Holy Knights, they had a much different ranking system than a ninja. Great Holy Knights are the most powerful of the Holy Knights, and possess the authorities of commanding over them, thus making them the leaders of the Holy Knights. This gave previous Great Holy Knights of Lyonesse, Dreyfus and Hendrickson, command over the whole country after the coup d'etat. Assistant Great Holy Knight is a title possessed by the king's brother and captain of the Pleiades of the Azure Sky, Denzel Lyonesse. Cardinal Holy Knights serve directly under the Great Holy Knights and act as their assistants. They may not necessarily be stronger than diamond-ranked Holy Knights, and some cardinals are elderly knights and wizards. Holy Knight is a title given to well-established knights that have great strength, which is equal to that of an army. They have command over ordinary knights and train apprentices to become full-fledged Holy Knights. All of them are imbued with extraordinary powers, such as lightning abilities, 9, and or even explosion are titles within the Holy Knight themselves. It seems the higher rank they are, the more power they have. These titles are, from highest rank to lowest: Diamond, Platinum, Sapphire, Ruby, Emerald, Crystal. Apprentice Holy Knights, as their name suggests, are apprentices and disciples of existing Holy Knights who are undergoing training to become seasoned and qualified Holy Knights. They are fairly powerful compared to ordinary knights, whom they have authorities to command over, but are still much weaker than a Holy Knight. It had been 10 years since the group known as the Seven Deadly Sins had betrayed the kingdom of Leoness and maliciously killed the great holy knight, Zarathustra, before suddenly disappearing. No one has seen, heard, or dared to dream of anything about any of the seven, and peace had been present for most of the 10 years. However, recently, many disturbances have been occurring due to a new threat that is coming to Britannia. These new threats are going to be the catalyst that causes a change in the entirety of the land of Britannia. However, if you want to stop these threats, you would need the strongest, most ruthless people in all of Britannia. You would need the might of the greatest of all holy knight orders to have existed. You would need the power of the seven deadly sins. Random hill near random village. We currently find ourselves overlooking what appears to be a tavern on the hilltop near a village. However, there was suddenly the sound of armor clanking as it seemed to be moving. The armor from which the sound is coming from is a set of extra large armor that appears to have rusted some as well, meaning movement would have been quite strenuous. As they continued moving, we see that their path was headed straight for the tavern, where a sign could be seen, showing the name of the tavern was called the Boar Hat. The seven came a muffled voice from the suit of armor. Must find the seven deadly sins. Meanwhile, inside the Boar Hat, inside the tavern, people were having a good time, as they were able to drink a various spread of alcohol ranging from some finely aged Britannia ale to even some sake from the elemental nations, which recently opened up to trading. People were having a good time, as they loved the rich taste of sake, but we're getting off point. Focusing on a specific table, we find ourselves a familiar group of women. So, anyone find anything? This question came from a red-headed woman, thought the more correct term would be crimson-haired woman. She had violet eyes, her hair in a ponytail, and wore a black, short-sleeved shirt with a red hooded jacket vest that had white fur lining the hood and black, form-fitting pants with black shinobi sandals. Strapped to her hip was a sword, or more specifically, a katana with the sheath being solid black with the design of a red Chinese dragon. This was Kushina Uzumaki, mother of Tsukumi, Taiyuya and Naruto. Currently, Kushina was talking to the rest of the team who she had come to Britannia with, in search of her missing son, Naruto. The Kunoichi looked at each other, before one decided to reply with, "Sorry Kushina, but we haven't heard anything about any of the sins, let alone about the specific one we're looking for." The one who replied was a woman with curvy brown hair and red eyes. She wore a dress that resembled bandages and had a couple of weapons pouches strapped to her thighs. She was also wearing a pair of black, fingerless gloves and low-heeled sandals with her black forehead protector wrapped around, well, her forehead. This was Kurina Yuhi. "Yeah, we've been searching everywhere, from libraries to bars, but nobody has anything about Meliodas or Naruto. Sai, I just can't believe we've been looking for almost 3 years and haven't even heard of a whisper of either of them." These were said by a young woman with dark ebony hair that ran down the length of her back despite being tied into a ponytail. She was wearing a tight black, short-sleeved shirt that showed off her D-cup breasts underneath her green flak jacket, and a pair of black fingerless gloves. She was also wearing a pair of black pants with low-heeled sandals and a ninja pouch wrapped behind right hip. She also had a black bow staff on her back while a short sword was strapped to her hip. This was Kiyomi Uchiha, one of the last few Uchiha in the world. "Don't worry Kushina, if we keep searching, we're bound to find something about either one of them," another woman said kindly. This came from a gorgeous and buxom blonde with brown eyes and her hair styled into 2 ponytails with a few bangs framing her face. She had an inch-cup bust which was clearly straining against her sleeveless, gray kimono blouse that showed off her cleavage, and was held closed by a dark bluish-gray obi that also matched her pants. She was also wearing a pair black, strapped sandals with high heels with a green haori that had a red circle with the kanji for gamble, cake, in the middle with a necklace that seemed to have a green gem on a leather cord. She also wore red nail polish on her fingernails and toenails with soft pink lipstick. Next to her was a woman with straight, shoulder-length, jet black hair and onyx eyes. She was wearing a bluish-black kimono with white trimmings held close by a white obi, though the whole thing strained against her D-cup bust. She wore open-toed, low-heeled sandals as well as what appeared to be a mesh clothing underneath her kimono. Something to note about her was the pig that she was carrying in her arms that was wearing a pearl necklace and dark red jacket. These 3 were Tsunade Senju, last of the Senju clan, Shizune Kato, Tsunade's apprentice and niece of Tsunade's former lover Dan Kato, and finally, Tonton the pig. Tsunade was the godmother of Tsukumi, Taiyuya and Naruto, though she hadn't been there for the three of them when they were growing up. The reason being because she didn't want anything to do with the village, due to her past. You see, Tsunade had lost both her former lover and her younger brother to war, and both had wanted to become Hokage of the village. After their deaths, Tsunade gained a fear of blood, as well as grew a type of hatred for Konoha. It was due to this hatred that Tsunade never went back to Konoha, but it also because of her not being there, that she couldn't help Kushina take care of Naruto or Tsukumi. When Tsunade finally came back, the first thing she wanted to do was check on Kushina and the kids. However, when she got there, she had finally realized the other reason she was called back. She had never seen Kushina look as heartbroken as did, and Tsunade couldn't help but feel guilty, because had she been there, she could have helped Kushina take care of the triplets and help Naruto. Tsunade probably would have gotten worse with her drinking if it hadn't been for Shizune reminding her that drinking wouldn't help anybody and would only hurt herself. Not that she didn't not drink, because she still enjoyed knocking the pints back whenever she could. So yes, Tsunade still loved to drink, but she now knew when it was okay to drink, and was in better control of herself. Especially after Shizune, after Kami knows how many years, explained how Tsunade could end up doing things or get taken advantage of when she gets drunk. Tsunade realized that all the years of Shizune telling her to slow down on the drinking or to drink less wasn't because Shizune didn't want her to enjoy herself, it was because she was worried for her. "I hope we find Naruto Niken someday," a young girl with red hair sighed. The one who said this looked to be a carbon copy of Kushina. Her most distinctive feature was her long, untamed, dark red hair that falls past her shoulders with long parted bangs framing either side of her face and one between her eyes. She wore a red, long-sleeved kimono blouse with blue trimmings, held close by a dark black obi, showing off her high-cup breasts. She wore black arm warmers, calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages, low-heeled sandals with a ninja pouch behind her right hip, while she also had a katana strapped to her left hip and a flute also tucked away in a ninja tool pouch. To keep her wild hair out of the way, Taiyuya also wore a black hat with pipe-like stripes and bandaged sides, keeping her bangs in place while the rest is pushed back behind her ears to trail down her back. The katana's sheath was blood red in color, and had the design of a tree with roots growing out on it in black. This was 16-year-old Taiyuya, younger sister of Naruto Uzumaki, daughter to Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, and elder sister to Tsukumi, who was her triplet as Naruto was the eldest. The day she and her sister had come back from the academy, they had been devastated to learn that her brother had disappeared. She and her siblings had always been close to each other to the point that they would know if one was hurt, in danger, or even sad. Their mother had always teased her about wanting to be closer than a normal brother and sister, but she would always begin vehemently denying it, though the bright blush on her face never helped. Taiyuya couldn't help that she loved her brother more than a sister should, but she just felt drawn to him. When they were growing up, she would always cling to him and absolutely loved the warmth he exuded. He always made her feel so safe, and whenever people would begin glaring at her, he would always be there to chase them off, or if an adult got beepy and tried to attack her, he was always to protect her. He never allowed her to get hurt, and whenever someone would come and try to hurt her, he would overpower them before throwing them away. Literally. Her Onaiken would pick them up and throw them in the trash. She could always count on him to be there for her, whether it was when she had nightmares, or when people were mean to her. That was also why, when her brother disappeared, it had been so devastating, because she had believed that he left due to not wanting to protect her anymore or believing she was a burden. It was only thanks to her mother and her brother's classmate, Tenten, who later became her friend as well, confirming that he loved her dearly and protected her because he never wanted to see her hurt. Taiyuya can honestly say that she had never cried as much, or as hard, as she did at that point in time. Not even when she first heard about her brother disappearing did she cry as much as hearing that he loved her so much. After that, she had decided to work her ass off in training in order to be strong enough so that she could earn the right to leave the village and find her brother. However, when she heard about how there was someone who knew where her brother is, she was happy and scared. Happy, because she would finally get to reunite with her brother after being separated. Scared because she didn't know if her brother was still alive, and she was afraid if the reason he left was because he saw her as a burden. However, she trusted her mother and Tsukumi, so she knew there was nothing to worry about and that it was just her fear getting to her. Don't worry, we'll find him someday. Besides, this also gave us the opportunity to train and learn more. Another voice said, Yeah. We also got the chance to get some pretty interesting stuff. Another agreed just as quickly. The first voice came from another of the women in the group. She has long blonde hair and blue eyes. She is dressed in a black dress with a white underdress which shows her cleavage, along with a portion of her E-cup breasts, a black and white choker, and long brown boots with black stockings. Because of her short skirt, her panties are often exposed, which led to her being given the nickname Panties Flasher by her elder sister Tayuya and Anko. The second voice came from a woman with short, purple hair and light brown, pupilless eyes. She was wearing a form-fitting mesh bodysuit that hugged against her cup bust, also showing that she wore no bra and went from her neck to her thighs. Over that, she wore a tan overcoat with a purple seams, a dark orange mini skirt with a dark blue belt and pale gray shin guards that connected with her black sandals. She wore her black forehead protector, a necklace with a snake fang and a wristwatch. These were Tayuya's sister Tsukumi and Anko Mitarashi, who was also a friend of Naruto's. The group kept talking when they were suddenly interrupted by drinks getting placed on their table. They turned to look who it was, and they saw what appeared to be a very tall and muscular young man, roughly 20 or so years old if only they knew, with green eyes, his blonde hair slicked back, its numerous spiky strands pointing backwards, though some of it fell down in a small tuft on his forehead. He has a distinct lightning bolt-shaped scar on his right eye. An old wound from when he was younger, had received it when he was fighting in the holy war against a couple of the archangels before he defected, but they need not know that, and he was wearing a white, button-up shirt as well as a sleeveless, black vest. He was also wearing white pants that stopped at his ankles, a loosely worn, black tie, and black shoes with no socks. On his hip was a brown scabbard for a sword, and the sword handle was in the shape of a green dragon with a ruby for the eye. If they were capable of seeing under his clothes, they would have seen his upper body was covered with long, jagged scars along his arms and chest. The scars on his side ran in the same direction as his left ribs from his spine to the center of his chest. He also has 2 scars located on the left side of his chest and looped to just above his heart before curving up to a stop. Finally, 4 straight scars curved around his left bicep before dropping straight down, while 2 on his shoulder curled over and connected to 2 of the scars on his bicep. Here you go, ladies. You look like you could use them, he said politely. They all grabbed the cups before taking a sip, and they all liked the taste, except for Tsukumi, who had her drink taken from her by Tsunade before she could have a taste. Tsukumi pouted at her godmother, who only gave her a knowing look before nodding her head towards their mother. Tsukumi understood why she still wasn't allowed to drink, despite being considered an adult. With a pout, Tsukumi just unsealed a bottle of water and drank from that. Kushina turned towards the boy and said, "Thank you, but aren't you a little young to be working as a waiter?" The boy turned and said, "Oh, you've got it wrong. I'm not a waiter, I'm the owner, enjoy," he told them before walking away. "Hey Sonny, what's that sword you got?" asked a drunk man. Before the man could answer, however, some bandits with swords came in and began shouting, "All right. Hand over your money, you old folks." Then they spotted the group of women, and looked at them with lust. "And you women are coming with us as well," one of the bandits said before he licked his lips, which got the women to cringe in disgust. Before they could defend themselves, however, the owner calmly appeared in front of the bandits with a plate of food and said, "Hey, do you want some food first?" The bandits and women looked at him like he had grown a second head, while all the men shuddered in fear for a second. The bandits looked at the food and saw that it looked delicious and decided to eat the food and then continue with their robbing of the people in the tavern. However, the instant they all took a bite, the bandits began spitting out the food with cries of disgust. He shook his head and shrugged his shoulders while calmly saying, "Oh well, still gross. If you knew it was horrible, then why did you feed it to us?" shouted the bandits. "So you can tell me if it's still bad." The owner replied calmly as he gave a shrug of his shoulders. "We'll kill you!" The bandits shouted. "Clean it up," the man said with a serious face before snapping his fingers. "Geez, what a pain. What do you want from me?" Wank, a voice said as an animal came from behind the bar to reveal that it was a talking pig that had spoken while walking over. Like any normal pig, it was pink, though this one came with a clover-shaped mark on its rump. "Hawk, clean the floor," the barkeep said, introducing the creature. "How about feeding me some better scraps?" Hawk said. The owner must have taken offense to that because he then turned around and said with a serious face, "If it's a whole pig roast, I'm confident I could do it," he offered. Hawk then began exclaiming how the scraps were absolutely delicious and the best in the world. This got the reaction of making everyone laugh at the duo's antics. The bandits were starting to get annoyed and were about to begin shouting again when the owner appeared in front of them and said, "I suggest you fellows leave before I get upset," he told them quite seriously. Apparently something about his look frightened the lowly bandits because not even a moment later the group cried out in panic and fled. With that said and done, a voice called out to him as everything settled down to the way it was before the bandits tried to rob the bar. "Hey boy, can you really fight with that sword?" asked one of the men, which gained the attention of everyone in the bar. The boy just smiled and shook his head while pulling out the sword and putting it straight into the air, to show that it was a broken sword with only a quarter of the weapon being the actual blade as it was in fact broken. "Nah. It's a fake. Make sure that anyone who tries to drink and run second-guess themselves on skipping out on paying the bill," he told the man happily. This received even more laughter from the people, including the women who, despite being shocked at the display, couldn't help but find the situation funny. Before anybody could say anything else, however, a man burst in panting with a scared look on his face. The man then looked at everyone and said, "Tu saw it." This got everyone to quiet down and listen as the man sat down and began to tell everyone about the rust night. This got reactions of people saying that they were just stories that parents used to tell their children to behave, or else the 7 deadly sins would come and get you in blood-rusted armor. Suddenly, everyone began to hear a loud, metallic thumping sound coming from outside the door to the tavern. Hawk sniffed the air and whimpered, "That smells an awful lot like rust to me," he said in fright. Everyone hearing this suddenly began watching as suddenly the door opened up to reveal a large figure wearing rusted armor walking in, before saying, "The 7. This got all of the men to cry out in panic before the patrons all ran out of the bar, leaving only the curious young bar owner with his pig, and the group of women, who all looked surprised to find the person they were searching for suddenly do the exact opposite of what Enko had said earlier. "Hello, would you like something to drink?" asked the bar owner, getting looks from the Kunoichi like he'd grown a second head. "The 7 deadly sins," the knight muttered one more time before falling backwards to the floor, where the helmet fell off, revealing the face of a girl with silver hair covering her right eye and an earring hanging from her left ear that had a blue gem with the designs of a sun and moon with stars in it. Later on, we find the group in a room, with the young girl laying on a bed and the rusted armor lying in a corner. The young girl was wearing a black, skin-tight jumpsuit with black leggings that extend from her mid-thighs to just before her toes, with matching black wraps on her arms covering from her wrists to just before her shoulders. The group of Ninja and Hawk had all been surprised, except the bar owner, at seeing such a young girl wearing all of that armor. While they were initially surprised, the group then became protective when they saw the young bar owner try to grope her chest with the excuse of making sure she was okay and alive, as he made specific movements to mimic that of a woman, that sweet, gentle face. Remarking that she had buxom curve while also wagging his hips to the side, sweet perfume, and went to grope her to check her heartbeat, and that her chest had a firm springiness only to get hit on the head. This got him thrown out of the room by the group of women before they asked Hawk to get a basin of cold water and a towel. Currently, the girl was resting on the bed, with a towel that was soaked in cold water on her forehead, sleeping peacefully, while the women were talking about the girl. "So, any ideas on why she would be walking around in such a big suit of armor in this heat, clearly for a long time, if the heat stroke she is suffering from says anything?" asked Kiyomi, knowing personally that metal armor will build up heat from being in the sun, and when it's hot. "No idea, but we could ask her when she wakes up," offered Tsukuyomi, which got the group nodding in agreement, "and maybe she knows something about the 7 deadly sins from what she was saying," Tsukuyomi mentally added, figuring that the girl must know something. Tsukuyomi then snapped out of it when she and the rest heard the girl began to stir. She opened her visible eye to show a dazzling blue eye before she looked around curious about her surroundings and was surprised to see the group all either standing or sitting around her. The girl gained a slight flustered look and stuttered, "Hello, there," while waving her hand. "Hello, it's good to see that you're up and feeling better. You gave us quite a scare there when we saw you passed out from heat stroke," informed Tsunade, gently pulling the cloth from her forehead. The girl looked even more flustered at that. "Sorry about that," she apologized while bowing her head. The group just giggled or chuckled at her antics, and told her it was fine and that she didn't have to bow. They soon found out her name is Elizabeth, and they then began to talk about what she was doing, wandering around in such big armor in this heat, and she informed them that she was on a personal quest to look for and find the 7 deadly sins. The group and Hawk were all surprised at hearing that answer. Before they could continue, however, there was a loud noise from outside in the main part of the tavern where they heard a bunch of knights saying they serve under some Lord Twiggo, in search of the Rust Knight who had been spotted in the area. The group came out of the room, after telling Elizabeth to stay put, and were prepared to defend the girl. However, before they could do anything, they were stopped when they heard the bar owner says that he knew where the Rust Knight was. "You better come out," said the man before the sound of clattering metal was heard, and much to the shock of the kunoichi, they watched as Hawk walked out from behind the bar and to the door. "Ha ha ha! I am Sir Hawk, the Wandering Rust Knight, and Captain of the Order of Scraps Disposal," exclaimed the pig as he came up to the group with random pieces of the rusted armor that Elizabeth had been wearing strapped to his body seemingly fast at that too. "What, a pig?" one of the men questioned in confusion. "If this pig is the one you're looking for, can I assume we're all good here?" he asked. Before anyone could do anything, a knight outside began shouting about a woman running into the forest. Well, there went that plan. The knights, not even that, they weren't even apprentices to knights, and simply served an apprentice, gave chase to Elizabeth. Without even wondering why they were chasing someone who might be innocent, or even stronger than them, they just agreed they had to tire her out before Lord Twiggo arrived. "If this is one of the 7 deadly sins and I capture her, then I'll be promoted to an apprentice holy knight for sure," the lead man declared happily to himself in greed. However, before anything else could happen, one of the men cried out and fell, causing the others to look back and see a full sprinting pig running them down, trail of smoke and all, and taking the men out as they cried in panic, "The pig's gaining on us." A man with a pointy nose panicked before Hawk smashed into him and sent him flying up into the canopy. The leader of the group cried out in fright, "No, no, no, stay away from me," he demanded. This caused the knights to focus on the group and not notice Elizabeth being picked up by 2 people into a tree. Before the last knight ran to the edge of the cliff. "What, where'd the girl go?" he asked in confusion, only to cry out when he forgot that he was being pursued by a rampaging hog as it barreled into him and sent him flying over the edge, crying out in terror. "Nothing personal, guy, but the extra scraps for tonight were calling out to me saying I needed to defeat you," the pig stated uncaring. In the tree were Elizabeth, the bar owner, and Tsukuyomi looking down as the knights fell. "So, how does the rest of that story go? Why are you looking for the sins?" asked the barkeep and Tsukuyomi at the same time, just as the rest of the group began appearing. Elizabeth began explaining that she was looking for the 7 deadly sins, in order to stop the holy knights. As she was explaining all of the horrible things that the knights did, they were unaware of another presence approaching them. The barkeep was confused and began saying how it might not be possible to find the sins because of some rumors that they all died, when Elizabeth exclaimed that they were too amazing in order to die so easily. The group looked at her in surprise when suddenly the ground began shaking. It turned out that the cliff had been sliced clean through and was falling to the ground. Standing on the area where the cliff was sliced, stood a knight with a thick mustache and dark red armor. The knight looked down and said, "Conclusion. 12 unknown people, dead," he declared before he looked behind himself. "Is that right?" he asked the 4 remaining men that were standing behind him. "But Mr. Alioni was beneath the cliff," said one of the knights. "Then we can simply say that 13 are dead," Mustache Man stated uncaring. The knights were shocked at how calmly this knight said that and said, "But Lord Twiggo, that's too far even for you." The now named Twiggo turned them and asked, "Then 18 dead?" as he scowled in their direction before stalking towards them. "Forgive us. Anything but that," the knights shouted in fear. The 5 knights then heard several sighs of relief and turned to see the group of women with a red-headed teenage girl carrying Elizabeth, and the barkeep carrying Hawk and the man named Alioni. The 4 knights shouted in surprise and relief, "Mr. Alioni." Twiggo, however, was angered. "What are you all doing alive? Don't change my confirmed death toll," he told them with a sneer. The entire group minus the barkeep, Elizabeth and Mr. Alioni all shouted, "Don't confirm it on your own," as they all glared at Twiggo. As the group was checking on each other, Twiggo saw Elizabeth's earring. "Well, it seems fate is smiling upon me today. That symbol is of the royal family. Which means you are, conclusion, Princess Elizabeth," he exclaimed, getting shocked looks from the group except for Meliodas. Princess Elizabeth? As in the third princess of the kingdom? The hawk shouted in surprise, while he barkeep just looked curious. Twiggo then said, there is a search order for you throughout the kingdom. You won't run, will you? The order is for your capture, but nothing can be done if you were killed in an accident. Twiggo declared as he placed his hand on the hilt of his cheaply made sword and looked in the young heiress's direction as the group panicked and began running into the forest, with Elizabeth shouting how she can't be captured and that she won't give up. Twiggo then swung his sword in the group's direction while shouting, conclusion. Accidental death. Twiggo yelled out. Once he swung, he caused the entire forest to be cut down, but everyone was okay except for some scratches and dust, with Hawk being the worst, with a stick being stabbed into his rump and Meliodas having his left sleeve blown off. Seeing the pig run by him crying for its mother, shocking as it was, didn't faze Twiggo in the slightest. Twiggo raised a brow. A pig? He asked himself before shaking his head. Never mind, he said to himself. Elizabeth shuddered as she began to stand, tears in her eyes. Elizabeth? Hey, what are you doing? The barkeep asked her. There's no escape, she said as she walked past him and towards Twiggo. The tavern master raised a brow. Wait, hold on. He told her, you just said that you couldn't afford to be caught or to give up. He reminded her, maybe if I surrender myself peacefully, he'll agree to take me back with him, and your lives can be spared, she said in thought as she moved closer to the armored man. However, rather than agree to it or say anything, Twiggo swiped up with a stroke of his blade, slicing the ground apart as he tried to murder the princess and those with her, something which, if revealed to the crown, would end his entire bloodline. For such actions, his parents, children, and possible wife, if he had any, would all perish due to his actions against the royal family. However, Elizabeth was lucky that the blonde barkeep was fast enough to tackle her out of the way as the blast of energy nearly sliced her apart. She whimpered in worry. Please try to get away while you still can, she pleaded with them. The young man looked to Twiggo. I'm pretty sure he doesn't want any of us to get out of here alive, he remarked to the princess. Elizabeth was lying on the ground crying now. Why, she said, sobbing, I was so happy when I met all of you. She stated with tears in her eyes, I set out searching for the 7 deadly sins all alone, and it was so hard traveling by myself, and I was so scared, she said as her hand covered her weeping face, and as she was crying her heart out, Twiggo advanced on their position with a deadly gleam in his eyes, walking around in that rusty armor, hoping nobody would recognize me. But there wasn't anyone I could turn to for help, she told them, and now, you've all shown such kindness to someone that you've never met before. She wept. I don't want to see you hurt, she told the group. That's why I don't want to involve you in my problems anymore. She wept loudly. Not when I don't even know the name of the man who was so kind to me, she cried. The blonde lowered his head a bit as several flashes of past memories ran through his mind. An old love whom he could no longer hold in his arms, impaled and dead on the ground, which caused him to unleash his full fury. However, the images left as quickly as they came, and he smiled at the princess, Meliodas. He told her happily, if you really want to know, he told her as the kunoichis all gasped as they turned to the man. The princess herself stopped crying as she gasped in shock herself, and that's when she, along with the rest of the group, all finally noticed the symbol on his arm. Play 7 Deadly Sins OST. Perfect time. I don't believe it, Elizabeth thought to herself as the image of the wanted poster flashed through her mind. You can't be, she remarked. She shook her head in disbelief. How can you? You're not. She couldn't form the words. Leone sat up in a panic and looked around with terrified eyes. Where'd he go? He asked, panicked. Leone, one of his friends questioned. The man with the dragon's sword on his back, Leone said, hyperventilating. Just take it easy, Pointy-nosed man calmly said, trying to ease the man's nerves. Sir Twiggo is about to take care of him, he assured Leone. You idiots, Leone roared. We don't want to make him angry at us, he said, turning to the pointed-nosed man. The whole kingdom will fall, he cried out to the confusion of his friends. Huh? They all questioned in confusion. When he saved me from the cliff, that's when I saw it, he said, shuddering. He's the real thing, the most dangerous one of them all, he cried out. As he told them this, Twiggo continued to advance towards the ninjas and princess and single barkeep. The symbol's right there on his shoulder. It's right there, he cried out, horrified. Elizabeth felt her tears dry up as she paused as she took in the sight of the tattoo branded on his left shoulder, That symbol on your arm there, it's some kind of beast?" she asked before she fully recognized it for what it was. "Wait, that hat's a dragon." Elizabeth stuttered in shock, with the others being surprised as well. And as she said this, Twiggo had reached them and swung his blade down with the force of a meteor, causing a huge cloud of dust to appear. Twiggo stood there thinking this time he got the group, when suddenly he was hit with a blow of strength, blowing him back as a cut appeared on his cheek. As he stumbled back, Twiggo cried out, "How is this possible?" he demanded before he looked up, and everyone was surprised to see Meliodas wielding his broken sword in his left hand. "My technique was flawless. I'm certain my blade struck all of you," he declared in shock. "But the one who felt the force of the blow, how could it possibly have been me?" he questioned. Twiggo noticed the broken blade and grew angry at this and began shouting, "And that thing in your hand? You plan on fighting me with that trash?" "Trash is just fine," answered Meliodas. Elizabeth then began asking, "Meliodas? Are you really that Meliodas?" she pleaded in astonishment, while the ninja all gawked at the legendary warrior standing unharmed before them. Twiggo was shocked hearing this. "Wait a minute, now your face is beginning to look familiar," he gasped in shock. "No. If that's the case, then why do you not look any different from before?" Meliodas then stood with his sword ready as if to swing from right to left with his knees bent. "All right, your time's up," Meliodas told Twiggo. "Have you figured out who I am?" Twiggo got a look of fear and began shouting, "No! It can't be! And yet you still dare to exist!" the man cried out with shaking eyes, and then Twiggo then swung with all his strength shouting, "I will not allow it!" As he swung down, Meliodas then swung his sword out as a chiming sound filled the air, Twiggo now shaking in mortal fear. Conclusion. He stuttered as a glow filled the air in front of his body. "This incomprehensible, extraordinary power, it's that of the legend!" he cried out as the glow brightened, and then exploded as it sent Twiggo flying through the air as his armor shattered to pieces. Meliodas stood unmoving and unafraid. 7 deadly sins, sin of wrath. "The dragon sin, Meliodas," he stated seriously. He then resheathed the broken sword, turned to Elizabeth and said, "Well, looks like you found the first one. Elizabeth, about the remaining 6, I've actually got business with them too, so I've been searching for them as well as of late. I've been using the bar in order to find information about them. If I had a serving girl, then I'd be able to get more customers and more information. You'll come with me, right?" Elizabeth looked shocked at the offer and smiled brightly while exclaiming, "Yes." Actually, a voice said. This earned the attention of Meliodas and Elizabeth, who both turned to see the women standing looking at Meliodas with serious looks. "We will be coming along as well." Meliodas and Elizabeth both grew confused. "Why?" asked Meliodas. Then Tsukumi stepped forward and said, "Because we have been looking for the sins, in order to see if they would help us find someone." Elizabeth then decided to ask, "Who are you looking for?" Kushina answered this time, "We're looking for my son." "Why would we be able to help you?" asked Meliodas with a curious yet serious face. "Because we received information that you specifically, Meliodas, know the last known location of my son, Naruto," replied Kushina. This caused Meliodas to go wide-eyed as he then answered, "I know that name. Good kid, been years since I last saw him, but yeah, sure, I'd be glad to help you look for him," he offered. Everyone looked at him in surprise. "You know Naruto?" asked the group of Kunoichi. Meliodas nodded his head. "Yeah, we used to talk with one another all the time. He told me tons of stories that I was glad to share with the other sins after he left for parts unknown." The group grew extremely happy, knowing that they now had a solid lead. "So can we come with you?" asked Tsukumi. Meliodas just smiled and nodded his head saying, "Sure, I think it'll be fun and amazing to help you guys out." Suddenly, a giant green pig appeared and everyone noticed the boar hat on its back along with Hawk, who had ran away earlier. "Nice timing, Hawk's mom!" exclaimed Meliodas, and then he and everyone else climbed on Hawk's mom. With this, everyone looked forward, all of them ready to continue their journey. Elizabeth and Meliodas to find the other 7 sins and the group of Kunoichi to look for Naruto, but decided to help Elizabeth along the way. None of them knew what was in store for them, but they all knew one thing: no matter what happens on this journey, it was going to be one hell of an adventure. At the same time, in another undisclosed location, in a room where 9 dark silhouettes stood on a series of stumps that resembled fingers, a man with a set of purple eyes with a ripple pattern spoke. "Report, Black Zetsu." he ordered. The Nine Tails has been located, but it may not seem believable when I tell you that he is no longer a mere boy. Black Zetsu said. Oh, do tell, is he a good boy to have grown strong like Toby? Toby is a good boy. A man wearing an orange spiral mask questioned. No, he has somehow turned into an adult. I assume it was one of his new colleagues that made the transformation, or used a special seal to enhance his growth. Black Zetsu said before shivering. However, there is something you need to know. He stated. Tell us. If we can't get the chakra from him, then we'll go for the sister or even that third option. A woman spoke in a commanding tone. His power, although suppressed to an impressive amount, is still immense. I wager it to match Pain-sama as he is now. I wouldn't cross him if he releases his suppressant to fight, he said in a serious tone. Pain snorted. He can try, but like all others, he cannot stand against the full might of a god, he said arrogantly. He then looked to the rest of his group. Go to Britannia and get him and bring him back. I don't care if he is on the verge of death, but as long as his body holds the Nine Tails chakra, we can extract it from him into the Ghetto Mizo. He ordered as the shadows vanished. Soon, peace will be in our grasp, Yahiko. He muttered to himself. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.